Are you ready for some smart, plain talk on politics, Israel, and the law? It's the Andrew Parker Show. Let's roll. Welcome to another episode of the Andrew Parker Show. Thank you very much for joining us on what was to be a joyous day. The celebration of the first day of Hanukkah is the day on which I record this episode, as Jews around the world are getting ready to or actually embarking on the first day of Hanukkah. The celebration of a myriad of God's miracles, the celebration of God, the thanking and gratitude for Hashem, God, the higher power, whatever that power is or source is for you, and the miracles that God brings to our lives every day. It is a beautiful celebration, grounded in Jewish history, the history of the Maccabees, who fought back against all odds and survived, and not only survived, but against all odds survived. But this joyous occasion and celebration, that doorstep was darkened by evil. By evildoers that we have seen in the name of Jewish hatred far too often. And what this episode is about, the Andrew Parker Show, is enabling evil and what the result is and has been many, many times before, as we've seen it throughout history. We could go back thousands of years. Anti-Semitism has been around since that time, length of time. And the examples of it are a myriad and many. But let's just start with what most of you know about. Although our young kids today, those in college and younger, know much less about it, if anything. And that is the Holocaust. They don't know even what the word means. And, of course, that lack of education and knowledge is the beginning of the end. And it is problematic. But even for those who do know of the Holocaust, what have we learned? Well, one thing that has changed, arguably, as a result of the Holocaust is that Jews will not go quietly. And that angers many, many around the world. Jews will no longer take slaughter quietly. They will no longer fail to, in most respects, fight back. And unfortunately, when Jews now suddenly, wait, what's going on? The Jews are fighting back against annihilation, against heinous atrocities committed against them because they're Jews. They're now fighting back. That's not, no, that wasn't part of the story here. And it angers a lot of people around the world. It angers the elitist liberal leftists who would blame the Jews for their own victimhood, unlike any other victim group that they go out and support blindly, regardless of whether they are evildoers or good doers. Yeah, victim, blindly support them, except the Jews, because they are oppressors, despite the fact that there are only a few million in the entire world of 7.5 billion. No, they're not victims. Just for being Jews? Not at all. So the Jews are fighting back, and there are people, they're angry. The Western Europeans, what is this? Well, we'll teach them a lesson. We're going to call for a Palestinian state. Yes, the Palestinians, yes, the same ones that have committed heinous atrocities around the world for decades, many, many decades, against not only Jews but others. Terrorist activity. The biggest single political cry that, if you call it that, of any other group in the committing of guerrilla and terrorist actions. You remember Munich? I could list so many. The Aquila Lore. Remember that? The many airplane hijackings. Remember when that was going on? Yeah, and again, Munich, the entire Israeli Olympic team murdered in cold blood. And it's not just Palestinians, but it's generally Islamic radical terrorists. And there are imams around the world that preach from the pulpit death and destruction to the West. Certainly to the Jews, but to the West as well, and Western civilization. So, since the Holocaust, the Jews are now not going to go quietly. That angers many. But in addition to that, the terrorism that has stretched without boundary or border, and that we saw yet again today, terrorism against Jews for being Jews, goes all the way to Australia. And isn't it interesting? I heard a report earlier today that survivors of the Holocaust, many, tried to find the place that they might go that is as far away from Nazi Germany as possible, to avoid and rid themselves of this evil, the evil scourge in life that is this hatred, this anti-Semitic hatred toward Jews, resulting in evil being done against Jews. And so they went to Australia, and they built there over the last 80 plus years well, just a little bit plus. They built there a beautiful Jewish community. Bondi Beach, a beautiful Jewish community in Sydney and beyond in Australia. Well, anti-Semitism travels across the oceans, cross borders, anywhere. And they'll find you. You can't hide. And anti-Semitism found Jews celebrating Hanukkah, the first day of Hanukkah, in Sydney, Australia. So I just want to, for a bit here on this episode, get a few things off my chest. We have had example upon example of these type of heinous actions against people simply for being Jewish. Sometimes they are wrapped in the cloth of Israel as a colonialist state, which couldn't be further from the truth and is a blatant lie. And when I say that it is wrapped in that blatant lie, it is to disguise it for what it really is, and that is anti-Semitic Jewish hate. And that's where the death comes from, the destruction, the heinous acts. It is not from this colonialist state sort of theme, which is a blatant lie, because even those that espouse it, other than the fools that get it from social media and TikTok and don't have a clue what it is, those who learn it and teach it to others know that it is a lie. But they also know it will rally the troops such that when these evil acts occur, when October 7 occurs, people, number one, will be numb to it. Number two, will not view it as heinous as it actually is. And number three, will ultimately blame Israel because of its actions, that they brought it on themselves. And sadly, there are far too many Jews that accept that narrative and apologize and soften the evil nature that occurred by saying, well, if we just didn't do this or if we just didn't do that, then things wouldn't be the way. They wouldn't hate us so much. It's just outrageous. It's disgusting. It's despicable. And ultimately, it enables evil. And when you enable evil, you are doing evil. When you enable evil, you are doing evil. When is the West going to quit enabling evil? When is the Jewish community, the liberal Jewish community, going to quit enabling evil? Oh, we aren't enabling. What do you mean? We speak out and we write our one-page, message to our community. All the rabbis, write their one page. The rabbis in the Reform and the conservative movements, they write about how horrific and heinous and we aren't enabling evil. We call it out when we see it. And we've doubled or tripled our security. We are in a war. Since at least 9/11, but certainly well before. But, if it wasn't clear enough, we are in a war of values, of civilization, of values again. And since 9/11, it should be so obvious. Since October 7th, it should be more obvious. October 7th, pro rata, 10 September 11s. That's how big per capita. Since then, it should be obvious. We are in a war for our value system. And it is not going to go away by waving the one page, isn't this horrible, and wringing our hands. Well, what do you expect us to do? Go into a world war against an ideology? What did the greatest nation do? albeit only because Pearl Harbor was attacked. There were so many, mainly in the Republican Party, that opposed doing anything about Adolf Hitler and Nazi Germany. Some of them supported him. So you call it out for what it is, Republicans. And they didn't want to get into that war. Ultimately, they had to give in because of Pearl Harbor. But that was a war for values and civilization. And this isn't some Johnny come lately, Johnny one note come lately comment. I was talking about this right when after 9/11 occurred, as were many. What did we do? We did a little, pinprick going into Iraq. And then we got out of there quickly enough before the job was done, of course. And October 7th, well, we went into Gaza. Israel did. And they got out of there, got demanded that they did this peace plan. It's not a peace plan at all. Before the job was done, before there was unconditional surrender, and everywhere that this happens in the world, there must be unconditional surrender. And the only way that happens is if Western Europe stands up. Against the government of Canada stands up. The government of Australia stands up. The government of the United States stands up for a world that they believe in. And they don't say, oh, there's evil. Well, yeah, you can't really do anything. Yeah, let radical Islamic terror just spread across the world. We're losing. We are losing. And you know that by looking on college campuses. The moral relativism, the complete lack of morality as it relates to good and evil. Well, one person's evil is another person's good. Yeah, but that doesn't mean. Yeah, so one person's pedophilia is another person's love. What are our values? I mean, what are they? At some point, you know evil when you see it. Yeah, but, they were downtrodden and disadvantaged, and they're victims. And so what do you expect? I mean, that is the argument. Of academics, of professors at these hoity-toity universities. Well, what do you expect if you, put people in despair, month in, month out, year in, year out, decade in, decade, that, they're gonna commit evil when you. First off, that is not what has happened. And I'm not going to get into the history again as to why this whole Palestinian mantra, for example, and by the way, radical Islamic terror goes well beyond. They're just using the Palestinian cause. That's all they're doing. They're using it to prop up and defend their heinous acts. And there isn't, this isn't a gray area. I don't believe. That's my opinion. Many people, a lot of them in the Jewish community disagree. Oh, no, it's, it's very gray. I'm sorry that 12 people were murdered in cold blood celebrating Hanukkah. I'm sorry about that. I'm sorry about the fact that 1,200 plus people were murdered at a music festival and beyond, living, in their homes, in the state of Israel, in the recognized state of it. Yep. Sorry about it. I'm sorry 3,000 people were, perished in the 9/11 downing of the Twin Towers. I'm very sorry about that. Yeah. Enabling evil is evil. A rabbi down in Arizona wrote the following 10 lessons. He calls them humble yet urgent lessons. 1, evil thrives when good people stay silent. Yeah, this is why I'm saying, why have we not come together in an international conference led by the United States, attended by the European Union, Britain, and all the rest? I know they're not part, so, you've got to bring them in. Australia, Canada, the other democracies in the world, and any other country that wants to join in, heartfelt, calling for the end of anti-Semitism, agreeing in a charter to come together opposing anti-Semitism wherever it lives, calling out what it is and making it very, very clear, defending Jews to have their own ancestral homeland in the land of Israel, and calling it out. Now, is that exclusive that some Muslims don't want to create a land for people who are called Palestinians? No, it's not exclusive beyond that. In fact, it might trigger it if it's successful. No, that's not done. Instead, we effectively stay silent. Yeah, we'll wring our hands and we'll have a few Sunday morning talk show guests that'll talk about how horrific what happened in Australia, how horrific what happened on October 7th, though nobody's talking about that anymore. It's not so horrific anymore. It's as if it didn't happen. And by the way, again, the most heinous atrocities, one human against another, in human history occurred on October 7th. And if you question that, go watch the videos, the unadulterated videos. You won't even be able to get through them. It's so despicable and disgusting. And now, a word from our sponsors. A record of success second to none. Parker Daniels Keyboard Law Firm, the numbers tell the story. The last 5 cases our lawyers have brought to trial have resulted in million and multi-million-dollar verdicts for our plaintiff clients and 0 defense verdicts for our defense clients. Put simply, we try cases and we win cases. Hi, I'm Andrew Parker. At Parker Daniels Keyboard, we take our work personally and we go the extra mile. That is why some of the biggest law firms, locally and nationally, send cases to us to handle when they can't. If you have a challenging and critically important business or personal legal dispute that must be favorably resolved, whether regarding a contract matter, a business divorce, a real estate dispute, an employment dispute, a civil rights or defamation matter, plain talk, if it's a big deal, contact us at Parker Daniels Keyboard. Wise counsel, winning results. Go to parkerdk.com. Looking to reduce your tax liability and grow your portfolio? Consider Texas-based Texacoma Resources. They have been delivering results for over 40 years in energy investments. Investors may benefit with strategic advantages like depreciation, depletion, and drilling, but should consult their tax advisors for their specific situation. Call True North Investment at 612-968-3442 to learn more. That's True North Investment, 612-968-3442. Texacoma Energy that works for you. Am I energized this morning? Am I upset and angered by what I see? Yes. So just my opinions. 1, evil thrives when good people stay silent. Radical Islamic terror must be destroyed. It isn't going to end on its own. And it is coming to, and it has already come to, our borders here. Europe arguably is done. I don't know, maybe not. But there is a strong argument to suggest it is. Australia and Canada not far behind. In the United States, with what's going on in our institutions of higher learning, may not be far behind. Number 2 on this list of 10, verbal violence fuels physical terror. Yeah. These protests around the country here in the United States over the last 2 years are outrageous, and the U.S. government should have done something about it. Joe Biden should have done something about it. The Democratic Party has blood on their hands, but it is not as if the Republican Party doesn't. These people on the far right, Thomas Massey in Congress, Tucker Carlson, Nick Fuentes. It's disgusting what they spew, Candace Owens. And believe me, it gives fuel and foundation to those radical Islamic terrorists. You know, they always put a little footnote in there. Well, I'm not supporting anything that might harm anyone at all. Verbal violence fuels physical terror. And the Democrats walking the halls of Congress, the Democratic Party, cloaking themselves in these people and bringing them into the fold as important members of the Democratic Party, and their voice should be heard. Zoran Mandani, Ilhan Omar, Rashida Tlaib, these great paragons of love and affection for your brother. Not at all. Protected by the Democratic Party, given the Democratic Party's label to them so they can run and get elected to office. Well, what do you expect? This is a democracy, after all. You have to allow people to... What are you talking about? At least the Republican Party kicked Steve King out of the party. David Duke basically booted him out of the party. Parties can stand for something. What if a majority of a district were blatant, openly supportive of Adolf Hitler to be a member of Congress from their district? What would the parties do? I dare say they would not allow it. So is that the line we're drawing? Rashida Tlaib calling for, the end of basically boycott, divestment, sanctions, and the destruction of the state of Israel. Well, she is within the tent. Adolf Hitler is just outside of it. Okay. Might be a bit of hyperbole on my part, but is it really? Verbal violence fuels physical terror. We've seen it time and time again. And the political parties are both really responsible for it. They can't run from it. But particularly the Democratic Party. I mean, they're calling for law and order to be destroyed. Agree or disagree from a policy perspective with what the law is, sending out law enforcement to protect, create safety and security, and to follow the law and to enforce it is what we're supposed to be doing as a government. But the Democratic Party is calling for opposition to that enforcement of the law. Open physical opposition. And it caused one National Guardsmen to be killed. Number 3, anti-Zionism is anti-Semitism, period. I'm not going to get into and spend time on that. It is, there's no question about it. It is a complete different treatment of every other country in the world, and then there's Israel. And these radical Islamic terrorists and those that wittingly or otherwise support them in the halls of Congress. And, you can't say they intentionally do it. Well, intentional or not, they have got to be so blinded that when they make the statements that they make, the squad on the left, Mamdani saying that Bibi Netanyahu should be arrested. He is the democratically elected prime minister of the Jewish state. He has not committed any war crimes other than defend his people. Oh, the Jews are fighting back. Let's go after them. That's what he's doing. Anti-Zionism is anti-Semitism. Zionism is what? It is supporting the Jewish people having a homeland in their ancestral territory, in the land that they have lived, they are indigenous to for thousands of years, well before Islam even existed. That's what Zionism is. How many other peoples have called for that? Many. And they're not said to, well, if you're a Zionist, you're a racist. No, not at all. If you're pro-American, are you racist because you support the United States as a Christian country with freedom of religion? Well, that's what Israel is. It's a Jewish country with freedom of religion. And by the way, when the Muslims controlled that area, or at least controlled certain parts of it from 1948 to 1967, they did not have religious freedom. And they do not in any country that they control. Fools who make that argument. Anti-Zionism is anti-Semitism. Number 4, Jewish blood is not cheap. No, it is not anymore. In fact, it is no less sacred than any other. And every attempt to explain away Jewish murder desecrates humanity, whether you're Jewish or not. Don't remain silent. That's number 1 on the list. Number 5, this fight is everyone's fight. Similar point. Don't walk silently. This is a fight for our civilization, for our values, our fundamental values, because our enemy in this fight does not share our values. And don't act like, well, they're human, and so they believe in the same human values we do. No, they don't. They don't. And don't be so ignorant to believe it, because the next thing is you'll be dead, thinking that they share the same values as you do. Number 6, security is a moral obligation. Again, I am reading from a beautifully written article by Rabbi Pinchas Alush in Arizona. Security is a moral obligation, and it must be funded. And it's unfortunate. Jewish institutions around the world, including in particular in the United States, are at risk day in and day out. And Jewish security and what Jews have to do to have some sense of peace, which of course didn't work today in Australia, Sydney, is they must protect at any and every event. It's not fear. It's vigilance and responsibility, as Rabbi Alush says. The Maccabees, which we celebrate, and the miracles that occurred on this holiday of Hanukkah, the Maccabees prayed, but they also prepared. And it is important that we prepare. Number 7, this is not just a physical war. No, not at all. As I said earlier, this war of terror, the war of having Jews around the world live in discomfort all the way to terror day in, day out, as to whether their kids, when you send them to school, are going to be safe, as whether they will be safe when they go to a nightclub or to a grocery store or just sleeping in their home. Now, this war of terror is thrust upon us. It really can't be fought with weapons alone, although that cannot be ignored any longer, as Jews must fight back and the world must defend against it, because our values, again, are under attack. The idea of the enemy and what terrorism stands for is to extinguish our spirit, pride, our purpose in life. We must act decisively in response to it. Rabbi Alush calls for, in number 8, that this Hanukkah season we should be more joyful than ever and fight this terrorism with that joy. But that, again, is not enough. Numbers 1 through 7, 1 through 6, call for other actions. We must teach our children that being Jewish is a privilege. And I dare say that Christians around the world should be teaching and doubling their efforts around Judeo-Christian values and teaching our children about the importance of Judeo-Christian values, and that not everyone in the world shares those values, and that some act upon it with evil in an attempt to destroy our fundamental Judeo-Christian values. Lighting the candles everywhere around the world this Hanukkah is that much more important. So I leave you with the fact that whether we like it or not, we are in a war of civilizations. We are in a war for our values. There is no more and has never been a more important war than this. Yes, World War II, you would think, had to be as important, and certainly it was. It was a war of values, to protect our values. But it was a war also of territory, of saving human life, and a war of defeating a regime, which ultimately defeated an ideology. This is all of that, plus This is all of that, plus bringing about a peace in the world by bringing about a reformation of radical Islam to live with their neighbor in peace and equality and respect and dignity, not as second-class citizens, not to bring about Sharia law that calls for some to control others. That calls for the example, Daniel Pearl being beheaded. Horrific. So we are in the midst of this war. And taking action that simply wrings our hands and what are we going to do? How did this happen? Well, it's too big of a problem. Let's just continue down this road. While our enemy is planning the next Sydney, Australia, the next October 7th, the next September 11th, the next Holocaust of the Jews or beyond. No, we can't remain silent. Again, taking action that enables evil, that excuses it, that apologizes for it, that puts it into a moral relative cube is most destructive. So on this Hanukkah, let us be joyous, but let us develop coming together a demand that we will not accept anti-Semitism and radical Islamic terror to continue around the world, and we'll come together to oppose it. Thank you for joining me on the Andrew Parker Show today. Go to theandrewparkershow.com. We are in excess of 440 episodes, many great guests, some of the best anywhere. Take a look, take a listen, theandrewparkershow.com. Until next time, please try and be kind to your neighbor. For more Smart Plain Talk, go to theandrewparkershow.com. Learn about all of your listening and viewing options. And remember, all the great things are simple, and many can be expressed in a single word: freedom, justice, honor, duty, mercy, hope. This episode of The Andrew Parker Show is sponsored by Parker Daniels Keyboard and True North Private Investments.
Did your employer make you sign a promissory note when joining the company, and now you want to leave, but you're afraid your firm will pursue you personally for that debt? This is Jesse Keyboard from the law firm Parker Daniels Keyboard. I recently represented a client who had signed such a note, and I was able to get them out of their $500,000 debt to their company, which allowed them the freedom to exit a bad employment situation and enter a much better one. Meeting our clients' objectives is our focus at Parker Daniels Keyboard, and in this regard, we win. Our experienced trial team of lawyers at Parker Daniels Keyboard have secured major victories in state and federal courts across the country and through arbitration. We have the legal expertise in all types of business disputes, labor and employment matters, real estate matters, shareholder disputes, financial transactions, security issues, and appeals. For wise counsel, winning results, contact us at Parker Daniels Keyboard, a premier litigation law firm that provides efficient, aggressive, and innovative solutions to complex legal problems. Wise counsel, winning results. Go to parkerdk.com.
Looking to reduce your tax liability and grow your portfolio? Consider Texas-based Texacoma Resources. They have been delivering results for over 40 years in energy investments. Investors may benefit with strategic advantages like depreciation, depletion, and drilling, but should consult their tax advisors for their specific situation. Call True North Investment at 612-968-3442 to learn more. That's True North Investment, 612-968-3442. Texacoma Energy that works for you.